Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. At AM 630.
637 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk. This is Mornings on the Mall with Brian and Larry. Coming up later this morning at 7:05, Lise Veal's going to join us, the legal analyst from Fox News, talk about today's 20th anniversary of the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson. Can you believe it? 20 years since the O.J. Simpson fiasco. Then at 8:05, Dr. Ben Carson, Maryland's own. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Brian Wilson.
Joining us now on the line is Lanny Davis, the person who served in the Clinton White House, friend of Hillary, and I sort of want to start there if I could. Good morning to you, Lanny.
Good morning.
All right.
Good morning, everyone.
All right, so the other day, Hillary, she's out on this book tour. She's got this book, and she's doing a whole bunch of interviews, and this was a statement that she made. Now, a lot of people have said, oh, you're taking it out of context, you're making a big deal about nothing. I want to make the case that it's not about nothing. It's a pretty significant deal, and I think it may have hurt her. I'd like to get your take on it. Here's what she said.
But we came out of the White House not only dead broke, but in debt. We had no money when we got there, and we struggled to, piece together the resources for mortgages, for houses, for Chelsea's education. It was not easy.
Yeah, and they struggled to buy those houses, those $4.5 million worth of houses that they buy. Now, look, I don't begrudge their success. But don't you think that falls sort of badly on a lot of ears?
Well, it probably falls badly on ears of people looking to play gotcha. Sure.
Well, I mean, is there much difference?
On.
But is there any big difference between this and, let's say, something like the 47% comment that Mitt Romney was so castigated for?
Well, yes, there's a difference, but I can't answer either question if you don't let me finish either one. So let me start with the first one. Both statements are absolutely 100% accurate. After 12 years as governor, they arrived in the White House virtually penniless. Fact. Second fact, when they left the White House, they were $8 million in debt. Fact. Now, from that point, they were able to get a loan from Terry McAuliffe and buy one big house and then a second one in New York. Now, people disagree or have some kind of offense from the words that she used, which she has subsequently clarified, and I take that. But let's start with the fact of what she said, which is accurate.
Hold on, did you just say they were $8 million in debt?
They were $8 million.
Okay, but Lanny, the president got it. Hold on, Lanny, the president got a $15 million book contract, so debt erased with one signature of the contract.
Right.
Done.
On the day he got a contract with an advance. On the day they left the White House, they did not have a contract with money in the bank.
So you're standing by Hillary's statement.
Their balance sheet was $8 million in the debt.
All right.
Fact. Now, should she have talked about that they were poor and that they were in difficulty after they left the White House? Of course not. For two people in politics for 25 years who had no money and were in debt tells you something about at least Bill Clinton's honesty. 12 years as governor, not one penny in his bank account when he came to the White House.
Well,
that's a significant fact that people will understand. An honest politician doesn't gather wealth from being governor.
But I would suggest, let me just go 1 point further on this. I would suggest that when Romney made that 47% comment, the rap on him was insensitive, tone deaf, doesn't understand real Americans. I would suggest that this comment by Hillary is exactly the same thing.
Well, that's a reasonable political interpretation, and you and I can debate interpretations. Mitt Romney was describing other people getting handouts, not himself. If he had said, I struggled to buy all my mansions, then you might have something that's analogous.
Right.
But in any case, it's fair enough for you to react to what she said as being insensitive to people who say, wait a minute, you bought two houses. And I think she has sensed that and tries to clarify that. But, for 12 hours of television interviews, the gotcha game is one phrase is what people seize on, which must mean that she did pretty well in the other 11 hours and 59 minutes.
Well, actually, I've got 4 pages of clips that I would love to play for you and talk about. But I would rather talk about something that is deadly serious right now, and I mean deadly. Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State for 4 years, and during that time, one of her responsibilities was to attempt to negotiate the Status of Forces Agreement in Iraq. That was a failure. There's no doubting it. We could not reach an agreement with Iraq. We pulled out in a very haphazard way, and right now, there are militant forces less than 100 miles from Baghdad. That nation will fall, and Hillary Clinton, at the time when we were pulling out, she said, I don't want anyone to think that we are abandoning Iraq. So, Lanny, we've abandoned Iraq, haven't we?
It's very troubling, the reason why we couldn't reach that agreement, which you have to add if we're going to be, because I'm going to certainly agree with you, I'm very troubled by what will be an al-Qaeda rogue state if this continues. But the reason that you should tell your listeners that we couldn't reach an agreement is that the Iraq government, after all of our treasure and all of our blood, wouldn't protect you as GIs from being seized and arrested under local laws. And after all we did for that government and for those people, we were going to leave our soldiers vulnerable to seizure and arrest what turns out to be a number of thugs that still live in Iraq. That's the reason that we couldn't reach the agreement. No other reason.
But wasn't it Hillary Clinton's job as the greatest Secretary of State we have ever had in American history to get Iraq to get an agreement? Wasn't it her job to make sure that U.S. interests were protected, that our troops were protected, and she could use all of her great diplomatic power that she will bring to the White House to get Iraq to sign that document? Since she failed to do that, we are now in this situation.
Well, everyone we did fail, and I say we wasn't just Hillary Clinton. It was the whole U.S. government, the whole State Department, and the President of the United States. And it was a great disappointment. Now I would like you to tell your listeners, what would you have done to the Iraq government that said, no, we're not going to protect your GIs? Would you have shot them? What would you have done? Give me your answer.
Well, I am not running for president, and I was not the greatest Secretary of State in the history of the United States of America. But it is a fair criticism, is it not, Lanny?
Look, it is a great disappointment.
So you don't think anyone else could have done that? You think that despite that...
Actually, the answer is no.
Okay.
Unless you can tell me that when they say no, that unless you shoot them and send GIs in to run the government, then no. If they... And they did take an absolutely.
I know that our troops,
position.
Lanny.
No,
I don't
know what you could have done,
Lanny. I always love having you, and I appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to having more conversations with you about Hillary as this goes on. But let me just say, in conclusion, under a different president, Bush, and under different Secretary of State, we did have an agreement where our troops were protected, and that fell apart with Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State.
All right, we're going to leave it right there.